Have you ever wondered what the sound of a trillion-dollar collapse actually sounds like? It isn't the thunderous blast of gunpowder, but the haunting echo of air raid sirens wailing from the spire of the Burj Khalifa on a cold March afternoon in 2026. For decades, the world looked at Dubai as an invulnerable oasis, a paradise seemingly exempt from the brutal laws of geopolitics. But as the first sparks of the Iran-West conflict ignited over the Strait of Hormuz, that golden dream shattered into a million glass shards across Sheikh Zayed Road. Look up. $1 million missile defense systems are now piercing the night sky of Palm Jumeirah. People are no longer looking at the heavens for fireworks. They are praying that a cruise missile won't find its way to their penthouse. This is the moment where glamour must surrender to the raw instinct for survival. Welcome to Dubai Dissected. Today, we examine the most brutal scenario of all: how a war Dubai never started became the fatal blow that ended the empire of sand. To understand why Dubai is so profoundly fragile, you must look at the geopolitical map. Dubai sits just a narrow strip of water away from the Iranian coast. The Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein for 20% of the world's oil, is the very noose tightening around Dubai's neck. When conflict with Iran ignites, that noose snaps shut. Marine insurance premiums skyrocket by 1,000%, and overnight, Dubai is effectively erased from the global maritime map. But the tragedy doesn't end with the violent waves of Hormuz. The UAE was never complacent. They spent billions preparing a grand emergency exit to save themselves. The Habshan Fujairah oil pipeline. This was meant to be their singular backup lung, allowing Abu Dhabi's lifeblood, its oil, to bypass the strait and flow directly into the Indian Ocean, defiant of Iran's presence at the gates. The UAE built it as a challenge to geography itself, a steel-clad guarantee that even if the world burns, we will endure. Yet in the brutal reality of March 2026, Iran doesn't just blockade the sea, they strike at the heart of this strategic truth. A rain of cruise missiles finds its way to the vital pumping stations buried deep within the vast desert. Imagine the final hope of maintaining the nation's cash flow erupting into pillars of fire hundreds of meters high, staining the dust-choked sky a deep, hellish crimson. When Habshan Fujairah is paralyzed, the UAE loses its ability to export oil, its only true lifeline. This fatal blow shatters the illusion of a safe exit. The world realizes with horror, in a total war, there is no rear guard, and a decade of contingency planning can turn to smoke in a single night. As the oil, the liquid gold that sustains the dynasty, runs dry, a new seismic shock begins to fracture the very heart of the nation's most advanced industrial hubs. If the sabotage pipeline is a bleeding wound upon the desert sands, then the next catastrophe is the literal freezing of the metallic heart beating within the core of the UAE. Every day that Dubai remains silent amidst the echoes of gunfire, its economy evaporates by $600 million. This staggering figure doesn't just stem from empty luxury hotels. It bleeds from an industrial titan on its deathbed. Emirates Global Aluminium, EGA, the largest aluminum smelter in the world outside of China. EGA stood as a symbol of a self-reliant UAE, a living testament that they could thrive on heavy industry rather than just raw natural resources. But this plant is an energy-hungry beast, demanding a constant, unwavering 24/7 power supply, acting as the very heartbeat of a living organism. In the war of 2026, as power stations fall victim to cyber attacks and gas supplies are severed, EGA faces the most horrific death sentence in the world of metallurgy. The potline freeze disaster. Can you visualize it? Molten aluminum, glowing at nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius, if deprived of power for just a few hours, begins to cool and solidify into gargantuan boulders of metal right inside the smelting pots. It is a white death. You cannot simply restart a frozen potline. You are forced to use jackhammers to demolish multi-billion-dollar structures just to rebuild from scratch. The radiant liquid gold that was once a source of national pride has turned into grey, soulless, and worthless blocks of cold metal. As EGA goes dark, tens of thousands of jobs vanish instantly, and global supply chains for aerospace and electric vehicles are severed. Dubai is no longer just bleeding out its tourism revenue. Its heavy industrial foundation, the final pillar of global confidence, is being permanently frozen under the crushing pressure of war. The collapse of oil and heavy industry acts as a vicious 1-2 punch, shattering the nation's physical infrastructure. But on an invisible battlefield, algorithmic strikes are silently infiltrating the city's brain, setting the stage for an even more devastating downfall. Cyber warfare. War in 2026 is fought not just with missiles, but with algorithms. Iranian hacker collectives have aimed directly at Dubai's brain, the DXB airport control systems, and the city's vast smart city network. On March 1st, a massive distributed denial of service DDoS attack paralyzed the entire electronic immigration and entry system. Tens of thousands of passengers were left stranded in sweltering lounges as the air conditioning failed. Luxury advertising screens, once displaying high-end watches and fashion, suddenly bled red with urgent alarm warnings. This incident sent a ruthless message to the global elite. In Dubai, your digital privacy and security are nothing more than an illusion. When banking infrastructures are breached and massive deposits are frozen by sanctions or systemic failures, trust, the very lifeblood that sustains Dubai, officially vanishes. The fear of a missile strike is now eclipsed by a far greater terror: seeing a bank balance hit zero. This is the ultimate breaking point, rendering every effort by the Dubai government to save the city utterly futile. As the final algorithms fracture, reducing Dubai to a hollow, glittering shell adrift in a digital ocean, the world suddenly awakens from its golden fever dream. They realize a brutal truth. In the cataclysm of war, Bits of data cannot save you, but thousands of miles of unyielding earth can. As the straits from Hormuz to Bab al-Mandab snap shut, transforming multi-billion-dollar ports into ship graveyards, the eyes of the global elite shift instinctively to the west. There, another geopolitical leviathan is quietly stirring, not to rescue its neighbor, but to execute the most ruthless positional annihilation in history. Welcome to Saudi Arabia's ultimate gamble for survival. But why does Iran, a nation that habitually defies every Western sanction, tread so carefully around Saudi Arabia? The answer lies in the economic shackles that Beijing has quietly woven across the Arabian Peninsula. Look at the numbers. By 2026, Saudi Arabia is no longer just a neighbor. It has become China's most vital survival partner and its largest strategic debtor. With over 30 bilateral agreements worth $50 billion, and giants like CSCEC and Huawei embedded in every corner of the NEOM project, Riyadh has masterfully transformed itself into an extraterritorial national asset of China. Every brick at the line, every 5G tower piercing the desert air, bears Beijing's financial signature. Tehran understands this perfectly. Destroying an aluminum smelter in Dubai is merely a strike against the West. But if a single missile accidentally hits a Chinese construction site in Saudi Arabia, Tehran would face a catastrophic fallout with Beijing, the very entity keeping the Iranian regime on life support. China currently controls 90% of Iran's oil export lifeline. A single frown from Beijing could cause Tehran to collapse from within without firing a shot. This is no longer a prediction. It is a geopolitical insurance policy signed in blood and oil. Riyadh has defeated Dubai not by being stronger, but by knowing how to bind its destiny to the Eastern giant. While Dubai clings to fragile protection promises from Washington, Saudi Arabia has secured a concrete guarantee backed by Beijing's wallet and influence. The global elite and multinational corporations are fleeing to Saudi because they know that their Iranian missiles must learn to read balance sheets before choosing a target. As Riyadh becomes a fortress, Dubai becomes a luxury prison. Money has no loyalty, only fear, and that fear is fueling the largest exodus in Middle Eastern history. Let's talk about the human element, the most tragic chapter of this entire scenario. 90% of Dubai's population are expatriates. When the conflict with Iran renders travel nearly impossible, these 3 million souls suddenly realize they are living in a gilded prison. The ultra-wealthy flee on private jets, leaving behind sand-covered supercars that stand like tombstones of past opulence. But what about the engineers, the doctors, the teachers? They watch their life savings evaporate as the real estate market plummets by 60% in a single month. The most agonizing sight, however, is the working class at the bottom. They have no money for flights, nor the status to evacuate. They are trapped in sweltering labor camps, staring at the iconic skyscrapers as the lights slowly flicker out. Dubai in these days is no longer the city of the future. It is a grim lesson in the cruelty of globalization, a place where humans are merely digits on a payroll. And when that payroll vanishes, they are discarded in the heart of a merciless desert. The collapse of Dubai in 2026, under the devastating shadow of the Iran conflict, is not meant as a critique, but as a sobering wake-up call. Dubai achieved a modern miracle. That is undeniable. Yet, it overlooked a primal law. No matter how high a tree reaches toward the heavens, without deep roots anchored in the earth, it will succumb to the very first storm. Those roots are economic sovereignty, the genuine loyalty of its people, and above all, a profound harmony with regional geopolitics. As the final light on the spire of the Burj Khalifa flickers out, surrendered to the darkness of war and drifting sands, the world will see Dubai as a haunting monument to the vanity of a bygone era. Will we glean any wisdom from these ruins? Or will we simply move on to build more castles in the sand elsewhere, waiting for the next siren to wail? Thank you for walking this path with Dubai Dissected. Subscribe now as we continue to strip away the layers of the most brutal truths in our modern world.